Good day, everybody. This is the first time to have this program in English, and we have a great guest from LA, California, Rabbi Abraham Cooper, who's the Vice Dean, I think, of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. And also he's a distinguished member of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, which I never heard of, I'm sorry to say this. But today, he's an expert on human rights, whatever kind of discrimination. So he's a well-known specialist on those affairs, but he is appointed as vice chair of the commission. So I'd like to welcome Rabbi Cooper. First of all, thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we've been friends for a long time. Do you remember, the first time I saw you with your professor, three of us had lunch together?
Yes.
Then I talked and talked. Remember? Then I said, well, did I talk too much? And this guy said, well, you have two Jews listen to you and being silent. And that was a compliment.
A big compliment. You might say it's almost a miracle, especially when one of the Jews is a rabbi.
Right.
So it's a sign of deep respect.
And I felt that, first of all, my English is not too bad. Number two, what I said is not too bad. And number three, you become my friend. So that's the background of our friendship. So today, he's vice chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. You're interested in China and the other parts of this world, and also you visited the Meiji Shrine this morning.
Yes,
because I accompanied you. I know that. So first, I'd like to ask you, how do you or the Commission itself see the situation of religious freedom in China? What do you think?
Well, obviously, not just in China, throughout the world, we're monitoring 27 countries. Mm-hmm. And the state of religious freedom, especially for minorities around the world, in many places is under assault. And perhaps in one location in India where you have majority Hindus, right. Muslims and Christians are targeted. You go next door to Bangladesh, mm-hmm. which is a Muslim country, majority country, and the local Hindus suffer discrimination. But
China is one of the problems.
China is not only one of the problems, but without a question is the top of the list.
Why?
Because in China, it's not just a matter of controlling the religions and making them sign on as official bodies of reporting to a government. Many other governments also do that. I can think of Vietnam, Azerbaijan, in many, many countries, especially those that formerly were part of the Soviet Union, mm-hmm. in a communist setup or in similar kinds of settings. All religious groups are required to register, so there can be a degree of control.
I see.
But what we have going on in China in 2023 in many ways is much more serious, because if we start with the Uyghurs, mm-hmm. there is a people that is being crushed because the regime has other ideas for what it wants to do for that part of the country. And the degree of suffering, needless suffering, on the part of innocent people there because of the accident of their birth, which happens not only to be Uyghur, Turkic people, mm-hmm. right. but their religion, which happens to be Islam, mm-hmm. is in many ways unprecedented in this century. In addition, for actually many years, the Chinese Communist government allowed the growth of Christian churches in the country. There were and are official sanctioned churches and church officials, but even in the area of where you didn't have officially sanctioned prayer, the government basically allowed it to go on. Not anymore. And we see, examples where churches are torn down, and you also have demands made on local religious leaders that their sermons have to be in lockstep with the political goals of the party. There are examples that USCIRF, our group, the researchers showed us where there were demands to actually censor the New Testament of sections that the government wasn't interested in, and even the Quran.
That's so.
So that it's a whole different level of repression.
Do you call the situation in Uyghur a kind of genocide, a cultural genocide that some people may call it? What do you think? Is it too strong a word?
First, you need to understand that I represent the Simon Wiesenthal Center, which is an institution dedicated to the memory of the victims of the Nazi Holocaust. Right. When we feel that the term, for example, concentration camp is misused in other settings, we're very vociferous because you have to safeguard history.
Yeah, they're strong, I know
but
that.
When you use the term concentration camp for the Uyghurs, that's exactly what they are. There is one study I saw that the birth rate among the Uyghurs has gone down some 80%. There is talk now of forced marriages with Han Chinese, forced sterilizations, etc. It is really, in some ways, unprecedented. And I know that people often bring up Tibet as a kind of precedent because of the geographic and cultural goals to transform a place. But there's a huge difference. And that difference is the technology of the 21st century that's now being applied to control larger populations.
Why do you think the Chinese government is so harsh on, especially the Uyghurs? Because the sterilization sort of operation, that's too cruel, and they may not do it to the Tibetans or other, of course, Christians or Buddhists. What do you think? Why they are so harsh on Uyghurs?
My guess has to be that the people in power right now in China want to reconfigure the country. And there's a pretty vast territory in Western China that they would like to eventually see it identified as having a majority population of ethnic Chinese and not ethnic Turkic people.
But they are outnumbering anyway. I mean, too many Han.
But in a geographic region in which the predominant numbers were actually not Han Chinese, they think they want to change it. Now you might say, well, isn't it rather incredibly harsh to take such measures? The answer is yes, but when you're running a dictatorship, you can pretty much do whatever, if you will, the marketplace will bear. And it's a real struggle, since China is such an economic behemoth. It's a real struggle to get attention at the world bodies, at the UN, etc. And even some of the media won't cover it. I want to say something positive about Japan, if I may, because during the week that I've been here, I've had two opportunities with one to sit with the Uyghur leadership who live here. And to commend.
They're pretty active these days.
They're active. I think there are about 3,000 that many of them have been given the opportunity to become citizens. And there are always complaints about governments, including this one. I think when it comes to the Uyghurs, there has been understanding, even compassion. And then at the press conference that they held in the Diet later in the week, although my Japanese is non-existent.
But you were there.
I was there for about an hour, and they were focusing on a very important issue, and that's the supply chain issue. The being able to utilize, I'll use the term slave labor, brings down your overhead. That's another reason. And most of the world doesn't want to pay attention to the companies that we all use. And I think also the Chinese authorities always monitor carefully what's the reaction overseas. If there's no pushback, there's no control over how far this leader can go.
But do you think that if we push them back hard, do they change their mind?
I'm not in the prophecy business, but I would say one thing about not just China, it was true also about the Soviets. And if you're pushed back in a smart way, that gets their attention, meaning it could hit them in the pocketbook, there could be very rapid change or at least some amelioration of the situation. If you don't push back at all, it will only grow in magnitude and scope.
Okay, let's get back to the China thing later. I'd like to talk about the commission. When was it established and how you became vice chair? And why?
That's a really good, I'm trying to figure that out myself.
I'm just want you to explain to us how the commission works. What's the objective? And mainly, to the best of my knowledge, chair of the commission is Mr. Turkel.
Nuri Turkel.
He's a special, also he's interested in Uyghur affairs. But that's not the only reason.
Right. So I actually nominated Nuri to be the chair.
Right.
And he was born in China.
Oh, he was
his family is Uyghurs.
He's a Uyghur.
And his mother has been unable to get out, and just on a personal level, personal note,
I see.
I'm trying my best to help in every way possible. So when I was well, first, what the commission is, there was a congressman. His name is Frank Wolf. He's now in his 80s, and he's one of the 9.
He's one of the 9.
He's one
members.
of the 9 commissioners.
Right,
but he wrote the legislation while he was in Congress, when he, I think, very astutely understood that, at least from the point of view of American life and mores and traditions and history, that one of the ways to take the temperature litmus test for how healthy a society is, how do you treat your minorities?
Right. As
Americans, the whole notion of freedom of religion is basic, going back to the establishment of the United States back in 1776. It's right there at the core. It's a foundational aspect of our life. And the legislation that passed essentially established from Congress, the funding comes from Congress, about $4 million, very modest, about 20 researchers to cover the 27 countries. And the most important element is that there are 9 commissioners total.
Right.
3 are appointed by the President of the United States, and then 2 each of the Democratic and Republican leadership in the United States Senate and the United States House.
I see.
That's 9 commissioners. The mandate baked into the law says these 9 commissioners have to work in a bipartisan way on behalf of promoting and safeguarding religious freedom, as part also of the broader human rights campaigns that are out there. I had actually was in Washington some years ago at a hearing of USCIRF in one of the U.S. Senate buildings, and I heard a number of Christian pastors from Nigeria who spoke with such passion about what's going on in that country and how so many of their parishioners are being targeted and kidnapped and raped and even killed. That stayed with me. And just before COVID, I traveled with my friend, Pastor Johnny Moore, to Nigeria for a week. And we debriefed about 90 survivors of Islamic terrorism, and then came back during COVID and wrote a book about it. So I was inspired by virtue of the fact that My first experience with this organization is it gave a platform to people who had no voice.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who had been in the Soviet Union 50 years before, that's something that is part of who I am throughout my adult life. So I received a phone call about 7 months ago from the chief of staff of the minority leader of the Senate, Senator Mitch McConnell. And
well, that was 7 months ago.
Yes.
I see.
And I was told Senator McConnell would like to appoint you a commissioner. I met Senator McConnell once in my life, a nice man. I wouldn't play poker against him. He's a pretty sharp politician. But my first reaction was, I'm very humbled and thank you, but you may have the wrong guy.
Why?
Because I said, if you're looking for someone who's approaching this from an ideological vantage point, and today in Washington, almost everyone is on one side or the other side of a divide, I'm not your man, because the Simon Wiesenthal Center doesn't operate that way, and that's not me. So please thank the senator for me, but you probably don't want me. And unfortunately, his response was, no, we know exactly who you are. Everybody and the senator wants you. So when I was nominated, the first thing that I did was it rotates. I was appointed by a Republican, so the chair would have to be someone who was appointed by a Democrat. And when I saw the list, the first thing I said was, I nominate Nuri Turkel to be the chair.
You nominated?
Immediately, before I even knew how the thing operated.
I see.
This, because in my humble opinion, and there's a lot of bad actors out there, including in this general neighborhood, but what's happening to the Uyghurs is the worst challenge in front of us today. And, I think your viewers might be asking, like, who cares what a commission does in America? Like, what kind of impact do you have? I asked the same question. And the interesting is that the Chinese apparently care a lot because they hacked the website of USCIRF.
Is that so?
So I have to,
congratulations.
Thank you so much. But I have to schlep around a second computer just for USCIRF work, and then also installed our special rotating passwords.
That's a message of warning though.
So that's a message of warning, and that we're an irritant, and that makes me very pleased, actually. So this is serious stuff. We try to do things with respect. And what I found in these first few months is that, we have people on the left, on the right. We have two people who are gay, two Muslims, a couple of Jews. The commission is mandated to work in a bipartisan way. And in the United States, I think historically, when it comes to human rights, when you can have consensus, you can do great things.
So when was that commission originally established?
It was established about 10 years ago.
10 years ago. So it's nothing to do with Uyghur or whatever specific?
No.
I see.
There's plenty of problems to go around. That in the world we live in today, and in the kind of behavior that the head of the Chinese Communist Party is exhibiting, and the total control that he is seeking within his own nation, and the application of technology. A few weeks ago, perhaps your viewers remember a terrible incident in China when an apartment house that had been sealed for COVID had a fire.
Right.
And the people inside were trapped.
That's right. So
in LA, for people who remember the 1984 Olympics or who watch American football, you have the LA Coliseum, which will be the host again in 2028 with the Olympic Games.
I see.
So I was sent a notice that the Chinese students on campus at University of Southern California were going to hold a vigil that evening for the victims. And I felt, you know what? I'm here in LA. I should go in solidarity. And one of the things that so shocked me was many of the students wore full face masks.
Oh. Or
Think about it.
Maybe
because-
white paper. No.
Right, no, and the
Something
white
like
paper,
that.
yes, the white paper for the older folk,
Right.
but for the younger people, not just for COVID, they covered their whole face because they were worried, correctly so, that maybe among the cameras and the
Right.
iPhones,
Yeah.
someone may be broadcasting straight back.
Sure.
So what hit me then was, with the situation with the Uyghurs today, of course, impacts them and their families and their traditions and their future. But when you think about, I'm standing in Los Angeles, I'm an American citizen, and I see that the way people behave here is impacted, you might even say dictated. Back from Beijing, it means that long range, this is a problem that's going to affect all of us.
But some of those Chinese students are more, in favor of the government because some may speak out, but cover their faces. But some are more so friendly to the Chinese dictatorship, aren't they?
Look, I think that, first of all, there are people who are sent all over the world on behalf of the Chinese government or a particular project or particular information that they want. And yes, they blend in, and very often you know the difference. But I don't worry about them. I assume you have them in the mix. But when you have people who don't know if their parents are alive and don't know if they, even here at the press conference at the Diet, to see 3 Uyghur leaders stand up without a face mask and have the room full of media, they've got loved ones back in those camps. That's a courageous, difficult stance to take, and it's one of the reasons why we believe that it's important to show solidarity for them.
In addition to the sort of special message or warning against your computer, is there anything else, from Beijing or elsewhere? Well,
I think the other issue that we've spoken about here this week is we took a look at social media and how Japanese people are depicted on Weibo and
depicted.
The language that's used is horrific. It's dehumanizing. It really, if it goes unchecked, will become embedded among millions of Chinese, especially young people. That could be a disaster. By the way, I think it would be also worthwhile for a study to see, how do Japanese people on social media talk about the Chinese and Koreans? So this is an area that falls between, you can't convene the Diet and write 3 laws and take care of this problem. This is not a legal issue. This is much more important. How do you make sure that you don't permanently poison the environment? Because you can't turn hate on and off like a spigot. Not even Xi can do that.
Well, I'd like to talk more, but unfortunately time is almost up. But I like the viewers to understand. He's a rabbi of Judaism, and he may not always have a good relationship with, for example, Muslims, but he defends the rights of the Muslims elsewhere. Is that the right description?
Yes, I think as an American, it's real simple. Any religious group that's under attack, or God forbid if there's an arson or a violent attack, that's an attack on all faith groups. So no one gets a free pass just because you happen to be a faith leader. If you express bigotry or make a threat or are part of a food chain of terrorism, we will oppose you. But the fundamentals, especially for the children of Abraham, Jews, Muslims, and Christians.
Well, this is very enlightening. Thank you very much. And I like the viewers to understand that some people still believe in whatever conspiracy theories. But it's completely wrong. And we will talk about it next time. Well, thank you very much, Rabbi Cooper, for coming today. And we will continue discussing similar issues next week. Thank you for coming, listening, or watching. And this program will continue to focus on various international issues. And I hope that you will register the channel, or maybe better, good marks on the YouTube as well. Thank you very much for coming today.